Good morning. Today is August 30th. End of the month already. Holy cow. My name is Marty Hicks. My website is helloextraordinarylife.com. Check it out. I have testimonials added to the page now, to the website, and you can get a free gift by signing up for that. And check out the next 6-week course coming. I don't have a date yet, but you check it out, see if that's something for you. I know some of you here have already done that, so thank you very much. And today I am speaking to being a mover and a shaker. I read this article about a woman who, in the 1800s, late 1800s, was a reporter, and she decided to go undercover into a mental hospital. She went there for 10 days. She was guaranteed exit because most people that go there, most women that went there, didn't make it out. And they were very, very abused, fed horrible food, rotten food, bad water. I mean, it was just, if they complained about it, they were punished for complaining. So she was actually released and wrote a book about that. And it changed the history of women and how they were treated in asylums. Many of them, she said, were just not fluent in English, and therefore they thought there was something wrong with them, so they put them in this asylum. And I was comparing that to us and what we do to ourselves. Being a mover and a shaker, she stood for women's rights. And I was making the analogy of our own rights for ourselves and how that happened to them at a public level. In an asylum, people treating them that way. And if we just turn that mirror around and look at ourselves, how often do we treat ourselves that way? How often do we abuse ourselves? How often do we feed ourselves contaminated food, bad things for us, meaning our thoughts and our feelings that we direct toward us? So it's just an external, that place is an external representation of the things that many of us do to ourselves on the inside, day in and day out. And depending on where we are in our journey, even as of currently with the situation that happened a few weeks ago, I still have stuff from that, like residual things that are still showing up, consistently showing up. And I find myself just always waiting, like I'm always waiting for something else to happen instead of looking for the evidence that shows me I'm okay and I'm safe in the world and I don't have to keep waiting, because I did that my whole life, waiting for life to treat me bad or for someone to treat me bad because I was a victim. Learning how to simply look at myself and go, what's happening? What's happening? And it totally just distracted me. I hate it when he does that. Lost my train of thought. Being our own observer, looking in the mirror at ourselves and looking at what's happening on the inside. What am I saying to myself? What am I thinking about myself? What am I afraid of? And I have this, there are certain words that I'm listening for as a result of what happened, and the real deep thing that's showing up for me is I'm not enough. So I'm sure that there are many people that can relate to that feeling, oh, I'm not enough. And then we go around listening for those things that tell me I'm not enough, or what people do or they say, and then I make it mean I'm not enough. Whether that's what they're saying or not, I'm looking for that because I'm conditioned and programmed for that. This is one example. We can do this in any myriad of ways about how we feel about ourselves. We look for the evidence to validate that thing. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Whatever it is. We look for the evidence to say, oh, yep, there it is again. I'm not really worthy. I'm not really good enough. I'm never done. It's never ending. There's always somebody out to get me. There's always somebody doing something. And I lived that way most of my life. And today I don't live in that space all the time, but then something happens that trips me up, and I'm in that space again. And I find myself in that space, and I find myself looking or waiting for those things. And then I'm looking, going, this is not really working. This is not really working. It doesn't make me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm living afraid. And so how can I shift? Because all the evidence in my life, I'm going to find what I'm looking for. So if I'm waiting for someone to prove that I'm not worthy because I'm looking externally, I'm going to find that. If I'm waiting to find that I'm worthy, I had someone just last night tell me that some of the writing I did when my dad died last year is helping her today. This has been over a year, and now she's going through some of her own grief and how it's helping her today. Evidence. It's evidence that what I do is enough and that I'm good enough. When I look for those things, then I can remember. I can remember that I am good enough. I can have some kindness and compassion for myself. I read an article very recently about this man, or I think it was a man, I'm assuming it was a man, saw a person come into the room, beautiful, well-dressed, well put together, as we all can do. We know how to look good. And he could see inside of her and that there was something off, something wasn't right, like she was dead on the inside. And he started this conversation with her, and he started digging in there. I'm not sure what the whole situation was that opportunity presented itself, but it did. And he starts digging in there with her and asking her questions and learning that, yeah, she doesn't feel good about herself. Even though she looks good, on the inside she's withering. Because that's what we often do. We know how to look good. We know how to present ourselves to the world, while on the inside we're a hot mess. And he shares with her this, actually he asked her a question about if she were to rescue a wounded animal from a shelter that's been abused and neglected, how would she treat this animal? Well, she would treat it with love and kindness and compassion and let it feel safe and nurture it and bring it back to health and bring it back to life and just keep loving it and letting it know that it's safe here and it's got a good home and it's unconditionally loved. And he said then, why would you not do the same thing for yourself? Because in essence, we are animals. We're mammals. Technically speaking, we would be considered animals. So why would we not tend to the wounded animal inside of us the same way we would attend to a wounded animal that we adopted? And it's just another perspective of, for me, I talked about the inner child, or the little one that lives inside of us. And I think, well, that's just another perspective for me to think about this wounded animal that has already been abused. I would never consider continuing the abuse. I would love it and care for it and feed it and take care of it. How can I do that for myself? How can I take care of my own wounded animal that's been abused and neglected and not cared for over these years? Because I've been programmed from the time I was little. Now, as a youngster, we don't have these coping skills. We just know something happened, and we were imprinted. We had some impression, some perception that said to us, we'll be punished, we'll be abused, we'll be neglected, our feelings aren't going to be worthy, our needs aren't going to be met, whatever that message was. Then we build in places to protect ourselves so that we can somehow feel safe. All the while, that little one that's there, that's being protected, is really being neglected. Because our protection comes in the form of our own self-abuse. That's what we do, because we don't know any different. not because that's what we decide we're going to do and it works so well that we're just going to keep doing it. It's what we know. When we're little, all we know is, oh, I don't want to feel that way again, so I'm going to do something that deflects that pain. I don't have to feel that again. So we create these walls around ourselves. And the walls may help us from feeling that pain, but it also blocks out all the other things that come along, which are the good things. That love and that care and that nurturing. And by default, we create this pattern of neglect and abuse and our own self-talk and not knowing how to nurture ourselves. If we weren't taught, we don't know. So this is about learning how to alter that, change it, be different with ourselves. And when I look at that, for those of us that are animal lovers, I look at that wounded animal, I'm going to care for that animal. So if I can apply those same things to myself, care for myself the way I would care for that animal, I'm going to start making some changes. I'm going to stop beating myself up or living in the same pattern. I'm going to begin to alter the pattern of my life. And that ties into being the mover and shaker, because as I begin to change my own way of being with myself, then I stop allowing myself to be abused by you, people outside of me. And the more I change how I treat myself and the more I can be in love with me, the more I will bring in love to my world. It's that ripple effect. So I'm changing and moving and shaking in my own world to alter how I interact with other people. Because how I am with me, how I feel about me, dictates every other relationship in my life. If I'm not kind to me, I'm not likely going to be kind to other people. I might be outwardly kind, because we know how to do that really well. But on the inside, not so much. So this is about making that commitment to ourselves to treat that wounded animal inside of us, treat that little one inside of us with kindness and love and care. And that will change how we are in the world. And our relationships begin to gain more and get deeper and grow and become more loving and kind. That's been my experience. That's the evidence. I'll tie it back to the evidence. That's the evidence in my world, is that the kinder and the more loving I am to me, the more I have that from the people around me. And it's fairly quickly. If I'm not being nice to me and I'm reacting to someone, they're showing me back by reacting back to me. I go, oh, there I am, not being nice to me, and they're kind of having a little reaction, or I've hurt their feelings. So it's substantial. It shows us immediately by who's showing up and how they are toward me, whether I say anything or not. So I hope that is clear as mud, maybe. A little insight into caring for our own wounded animal and being a mover and shaker in our own world. And that's what I have for today, I think. Sarah, did you mute yourself?
Yeah, I was muted, sorry.
It's all right. I knew you were, and if you were going to start talking, then it wouldn't go very far. I wouldn't hear you. How was that for you?
Yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot. Anything resonate for you?
Yeah, like the whole, like, how would you treat a little animal? right? And, like, I would never hurt, like, let's just use Buddy as an example. Like, I would never hurt Buddy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I hurt myself all the time, so, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to work on that too, is considering how would I treat a wounded animal. Because when I get wounded, I'm not nice to me because I get in that fear place. So when I see a wounded animal afraid, I would never treat them the way I do to me. So I'm gonna practice that. The kindness and compassion and love. It's a practice. It takes practice, and it takes time, and it takes commitment. And it's become a place that over time I don't live in that self-abuse primarily. And then when something happens that trips me up, I was telling Lou, I said, I feel like I just get some traction and I'm just getting some movement, and then someone will say something, and it's not, her intention is to help me, and I hear it as I'm still not good enough. So shifting out of that place takes some practice and healing, continuing to heal those deeper layers, those deeper wounds of programming from when we were children. It's a lifetime. I always felt like, oh, I'm never enough. And then I realized I'm never done. And that doesn't mean I'm not enough. It just means it's a lifetime of being human. Continuing to practice.